Before you scroll, before you assume this is another video telling you to ignore women or play games, pause for 1 second. Because what you're about to hear isn't about manipulation, and it's not about acting cold. It's about something much deeper, much quieter, and honestly much more uncomfortable. It's about why the moment you stop trying so hard, the moment you stop explaining yourself, the moment you stop leaning forward emotionally, something strange happens inside her mind. Suddenly you're not forgotten, you're felt, and if you've ever wondered why someone only seemed to value you when you pulled away, this video will finally make sense of that confusion. Welcome to Mind Unmasked, the channel where we strip away illusions, decode human behavior, and say the quiet truths most people feel but can't explain. If you've ever felt overlooked, overgiving, or emotionally invisible, you're exactly where you need to be. Most men are taught, directly or indirectly, that attraction grows through effort. Text more, show interest, be consistent, prove you care, and on the surface, that sounds reasonable. After all, effort matters in relationships. But psychology doesn't respond to effort the way logic does. The human mind doesn't attach value based on how much someone gives. It attaches value based on contrast, emotional impact, and perceived loss. And that's where everything breaks down, because when you give too much of yourself too early, your presence stops being felt. It becomes background noise, familiar, predictable, safe in the most dangerous way possible. Not safe as in secure, but safe as in guaranteed. And the mind does not crave what feels guaranteed. It craves what feels alive. Pulling away correctly is not about disappearing to provoke anxiety. It's not about being distant to punish someone. It's about restoring balance to an emotional dynamic that quietly drifted off center. When you're always available, always initiating, always emotionally open without resistance, the other person never has to reach inward to feel you. You're already there, fully exposed, nothing left to discover, and the brain stops engaging, not because she's cruel or shallow, but because the mind conserves energy. It only focuses deeply on what requires attention. Here's the part most people miss. Women don't miss men because those men are perfect. They miss them because those men left an emotional imprint that was never fully resolved, something unfinished. Something that made them feel seen, grounded, curious, or emotionally awake, and then suddenly wasn't there anymore. When you pull away in a grounded, self-respecting way, you don't create panic. You create space. And space is where memory starts to echo. Think about this. When you're constantly present, your presence doesn't register. But when it's gone, the nervous system notices. Not in a dramatic way, but in subtle moments. A pause before sleep, a quiet afternoon, a small emotional drop where something used to be. That's when missing begins, not because you vanished, but because you mattered enough to leave a shape behind. Pulling away correctly means you stop over-explaining, you stop justifying your value, you stop performing emotional labor in hopes of being chosen, you return to your own center, you invest your attention where it's reciprocated. And that shift alone changes how you're perceived, because the moment you stop chasing connection, your energy becomes self-contained, and self-contained energy feels solid, grounded, hard to ignore. The psychology behind this is simple but uncomfortable. The human brain is wired to notice loss more intensely than gain. We adapt quickly to presence, but absence activates reflection. When you're always there, she doesn't have to reflect. When you pull away with dignity, her mind fills in the silence, and what it fills it with depends on how you showed up before. If you were authentic, calm, emotionally steady, and not needy, your absence feels heavier. It lingers. This is why pulling away works only when it's done from strength, not from resentment. If you pull away while emotionally wounded, hoping she notices, that energy leaks through. It feels like pressure. like manipulation, and it backfires. But when you pull away because you genuinely respect yourself, because you choose peace over pursuit, something flips. You're no longer trying to be valued. You already are, at least to yourself. And that self-valuation is what others respond to. Women miss men who had boundaries, men who didn't need constant reassurance, men who enjoyed connection but weren't dependent on it, because those men represent emotional stability. And emotional stability is rare, it's grounding, it feels safe without being boring. When such a man steps back, it doesn't feel like abandonment, it feels like a quiet question, and questions pull the mind inward. Another reason pulling away correctly makes women miss you is because it restores polarity. Attraction requires tension, not chaos, but healthy tension. When you're always agreeable, always accommodating, always emotionally available without friction, polarity collapses. You become emotionally flat in her perception. But when you reclaim your space, your time, your emotional rhythm, polarity returns. You're no longer orbiting her world. You're standing in your own, and that shift is felt instantly, even if it's never spoken. Here's something rarely said out loud. Being missed has less to do with how much you gave, and more to do with how you made someone feel about themselves. Did she feel calmer around you, more understood, more herself? Or did she feel responsible for your happiness? Did she feel pressure, expectation, emotional weight? Because when someone feels emotionally responsible for another person, distance becomes relief, not longing. Pulling away correctly removes that weight. It allows her to remember the good without the burden. This is why chasing never works. Not because effort is unattractive, but because desperation dissolves mystery. And the mind cannot miss what it fully understands. When you pull away without drama, without bitterness, without explanation, you reintroduce mystery. Not artificial mystery, but natural distance. And in that distance, curiosity wakes up. There's also a mirror effect at play. When you stop investing emotionally where it's not reciprocated, it forces the other person to confront their own level of investment. Your absence becomes a reflection. And sometimes that reflection is uncomfortable. It asks a silent question. Why does this feel different? Why do I notice this now? And that internal questioning is the beginning of missing someone. Pulling away correctly is also an act of self-trust. It's you saying without words, I don't need to beg to be chosen. I don't need to convince. I don't need to prove my worth through effort. And confidence that isn't loud is deeply attractive, because it signals emotional maturity. It signals that you're not afraid of being alone, and paradoxically, that's what makes people want to come closer. Another important piece is emotional pacing. Many connections fail not because there was no attraction, but because the pacing was off. One person leaned in faster, shared more, invested more, and the imbalance quietly killed desire. Pulling away corrects pacing. It allows attraction to breathe. It gives emotions time to catch up to actions. And when emotions finally align, they feel real, not forced. This isn't about withdrawing affection forever. It's about knowing when to step back so connection can recalibrate. When you pull away correctly, you're not closing the door. You're leaving it unlocked and stepping outside, and that act alone changes the dynamic. Because now, if she wants you, she has to move too, and movement creates investment. The reason this works so consistently is because it aligns with how humans form attachment. We bond through shared emotional experiences, not constant access. And sometimes, absence intensifies the memory of those experiences. It allows the nervous system to process them, to feel them fully, without new input distracting from reflection. If you've ever noticed someone reaching out after you stopped trying, it wasn't coincidence. It wasn't magic. It was psychology. Your emotional energy shifted from outward to inward. And that shift was felt. Even if she couldn't explain it, she noticed the difference. The tone changed, the rhythm changed, and suddenly you weren't predictable anymore. But here's the truth that matters most. Pulling away correctly only works when you're genuinely okay with the outcome, when you're not using distance as a tool to get a reaction, but as a choice to protect your peace. That's what makes it powerful. Because the mind can sense intention, and intention rooted in self-respect feels different than intention rooted in fear. Attraction doesn't grow where there is pressure. It grows where there is freedom. When you give someone the freedom to miss you, they finally get the chance to feel what you meant to them. And sometimes they realize it too late. But that's not your loss. That's the cost of clarity. So if you're wondering whether pulling away is the right move, the question isn't, will she miss me? The real question is, have I been abandoning myself to keep this connection alive? Because the moment you stop doing that, the entire dynamic shifts. Whether she comes closer or not, you win. Because you return to yourself. And that is the most attractive position anyone can stand in. If this spoke to something you felt but never had words for, take a second and let that register. That's the work we do here at Mind Unmasked. We don't teach tricks, we uncover truths. If you want more psychology-backed insights into attraction, emotional behavior, and the hidden forces shaping human connection, stay with us. And remember this, the people who are meant to feel you will feel your absence, and the ones who don't were never really there to begin with.